Hello everybody, welcome along. Great to see you this afternoon. We have a busy programme lined up for you. You'll be glad to see a complaint flooded in about not being able to see the check shirt last week. So you're glad, I'm sure, that you're able to see it this week. No, it didn't really. But anyway, this week, challenge is undertaken by Andrew. You'll remember at the start of this lockdown, it could be months ago or years ago now, dear knows when it was. You'll remember there was one thing that was pretty big on social media. Well, two really. There was doing TikTok dances, going upstairs and all that sort of stuff. And the other one was doing keepy ups with toilet rolls. Well, Andrew has undertaken that because using your feet ties in very nicely to this week's verse from Psalm 51. And also it ties in very nicely to the story that we're going to look at. And that is in John 13, where Jesus sorts out the feet of the disciples. So later on, you might need this sort of stuff as we'll go through that story. Other news this week, did you see live sport was back on TV yesterday? Unbelievable. I would swear to you there's probably more people watched Donaghadee Football Club at the Damfield at Crumlin Park there than there were in the grounds. But good to see live sport back in Germany. And maybe we'll get some here in the near future too. Good, thank you. Let's get on with the challenge. Well done, Andrew. Not an easy skill to master. Certainly when you see some of the professionals doing it, it is incredible, but you did very well. Thank you very much indeed for having a go. Maybe you can try and do a couple. I have a boy here in this house who tells me he can do 5, so it's a very difficult thing to do. Well done. The first then from Chloe, thank you so much Chloe for this, is from Psalm 51 and verse number 7.
In the silence you won't let go. In the questions your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore.
Right, welcome back. Thank you so much Chloe for that. That was great. Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. Very important principle when it comes to how God sees us and the sin that we have in our heart. Of course, the roll is covered. Don't worry about that. I've checked all the names off and everyone's here, so we're good to go. I forgot to do that earlier, but sometimes these things happen. Now, what we're going to do now is, well, I was reluctant to look at this really. And for someone who's middle-aged, this is quite a task. You're going to need to look at these bad boys here. Look at those, look at that. Not the most glamorous of things, feet, but they're pretty practical, I'm sure you would agree. And we're going to look at a story in John 13 where the Lord Jesus does something remarkable for his disciples' feet, and we're going to take a little lesson from that. The story itself I'm going to read you is from 50 Craziest Bible Stories. Thank you, Andy Robb. I'm going to read it and then we'll see what we can get from it. Cheesy challenge it's called. It's probably why you'll need these. You probably don't need me to tell you that Jesus just wasn't an ordinary guy. He was the Son of God, which meant that he was the most important person in the whole vast universe. And when you're that high up the pecking order, you can call the shots and nobody can stop you. So with that in mind, this bit from the Bible is going to sound all the more crazy to you. Jesus was in Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, for the Jewish Passover festival. It was a great time of celebration when the Jewish people remembered how God had rescued them from a life of slavery in Europe. A lamb was sacrificed to remind them of how blood was once daubed over the doorways to protect them. This year, the Passover meant something different to Jesus because he knew that it would be the time when his life would be sacrificed for the good of all people. As Jesus and his 12 disciples were enjoying the traditional Passover meal, he got to his feet, took off his outer garment, so he basically took off his coat, and tied a towel around his waist. You've all seen that. That's how you get out of the bath or get out of the shower. What was Jesus playing at? This sort of thing had never happened at a Passover meal before. Without a word, Jesus filled a basin with water and then headed for Peter, one of the disciples. Peter quickly put two and two together and sussed that. Shock horror, Jesus was planning to wash his feet. No way, not Jesus. Jesus knew full well that Peter hadn't a clue what he was up to, but told him that one day he would understand the meaning of it. At which, Peter changed his mind completely and said that all things considered, it was fine with him if Jesus did his head and his hands as well while he was at it. Jesus didn't take Peter up on his offer, but it seems from what the Bible tells us about that unusual evening that Jesus eventually got round to washing the feet of every person in the room. My wife here sometimes says of an evening, "Oh, would you rub my feet?" And maybe you've got someone in your house that's a bit like that. Rub your feet. Pretty disgusting. I imagine in the days that Jesus was around, that feet were pretty battered too. There were no air soles in their shoes. There were no cushioned memory foam soles that they could wander around with, and it was lovely and soft. I can't imagine there would have been many people doing pedicures in beauty salons. Feet were pretty rough, I would suspect, in those days, and they would have been open, maybe open sandals, as the classic time always shows us at sort of Christmas and any of the clips you'll ever see, open-toed sandals. Feet were pretty rough, I would have thought. Not well manicured like ours can sometimes be today. And to get down and to wash somebody's feet was a sign of tremendous service. And people would have been made to do that or employed to do that in the houses of rich people. What a lovely thing to do, get your feet washed. It's still nice today. Sometimes shops, well, they were had a while ago, the little fish that you could put your feet in a basin and they would nibble at them and they would remove all the dead skin. Oh, lovely, lovely and relaxing. You maybe have a foot spa at home. I think my granny had one. That was about the last time I've seen one. But people like to have their feet taken care of. And in this Bible story, it's no different. But it's very, very different. Let me read to you what it says from the Bible here. It tells us in John chapter 13, it says, "And supper being ended, then Jesus, knowing the Father had given all things into his hand, rose from supper, laid aside his garment," that was his outer coat, "and took a towel and wrapped it round him." A bit like whenever you see somebody doing that. So no different to this, where they get a towel and they wrap it round him there, just like that. Okay, so that's what it was like. He wrapped the towel round him. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded or which he was wearing. And that's the part of the story that is crucial. All the dirt and all the muck and all the rubbish and all the smelly bits from the disciples' feet, Jesus washed them, yes. But he wasn't just carrying a towel. He didn't have a towel in his hand and just said, "Here, I'll wipe that." No. It was the towel that Jesus was wearing that he dried their feet with. And that reminds me very much of what Jesus does for us when he saves us. All the muck and all the dirt from our lives, Jesus takes as his own, even though it's not his. All the dirt and all the muck from the disciples' feet, he took that onto the towel that he was wearing as if it were his own. And that's the amazing thing about this story and the amazing thing about what Jesus says to us. To make us fit for heaven, to wash us whiter than snow so that we are fit for heaven. All the wrong things that we do, he takes them as if they were his own, just like the illustration in the story is. What an amazing thing for Jesus to do. Something that we'll be eternally grateful for. And something you'll be eternally grateful for if you ask him into your heart to take your sin and to wash you whiter than snow, and all the muck and dirt that you have, that he takes that as if it were his own. That's what the Christian message is. The story in the Bible goes on and talks about service and doing some things for one another. That's lovely, but that's the bit that I love. The fact that the muck and dirt of my life and the muck and dirt of the disciples' feet, Jesus took that and he wore it as if it was his own. He took my sin and he wore it on the cross, and he bore it on the cross as if it were his own. That's an amazing thing. Right, a couple of wee queries. We're going to do one question and then I'll give you the answer and you need to give out an idea of what the question is. So very straightforwardly, what will we have? Well, we'll double the sweet offering this week. Okay, sweet offering, we'll double the sweet offering. So for 2 sweeties, which body part was washed by the Lord Jesus? Of course, you're spot on. It was the disciples' feet. Well done. There we go. Squash them there. Good, reach it. Good stuff. Right. I'll give you a better prize this week, a bigger one. Give you 2 lollies. Imagine if you actually got these. Anyway, I'll give you 2 lollies. I'm going to give you the answer to the question. You need to give me what the question was. So the answer to the question that you're looking was to make up the question. You're looking to make up the question. The answer is, wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. That's the answer. What's the question? Of course, was the memory verse this week. Well done. Psalm 51 verse 7. There you go. 2 lollies. Take those. Don't beat them all at once now. Good. And make sure, in terms of washing, make sure you brush your teeth tonight after eating all those sweeties. It's good to see you this week. Thank you for joining us. I'll maybe see you next week, all being well, God willing, when we'll take another look at another story and see what that can teach us about the Lord Jesus. Thank you, and have a great rest of the weekend, great rest of the week, whatever you're doing. We'll see you soon. God bless.